find a way.
Ryan, Katy, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Like, you guys have such a great story. Like 5 kids, great corporate careers, decide to start a new business. Like there's so much I'm curious to learn more about. When we first started talking, like a couple years ago, I was actually intimidated because you were a process engineer. Am I right?
Yes.
Describe it right,
Yeah.
right? And like, I fancy myself as a process person, but I had never like come face to face with a professional. So I was like, okay, we built this systematic process and now I'm going to show it to a professional. And you were very kind.
The system works. It's been proven for sure.
So, but no, I was intimidated by that. But I'm curious about learning more about like what you did. Like I know you worked on some interesting projects, but in that career, like how'd you get there? How did you get there?
Well, so I work for essentially a consulting firm.
Okay.
And so we went to clients and they had processes and manufacturing steps already in place that they wanted to make. And it was our job to help facilitate that. You know, how do you get from point A to point B? And I worked in the life sciences industry, so it was drugs and pharmaceuticals. But I also did some other things, like I did a bourbon distillation facility, which was pretty neat. So it was just all different things based on, you know, the client's needs, and we helped, you know, build plants for them, essentially. Yeah.
So did you go to school specifically for that,
No.
or did you just?
So my degree is in chemical engineering. And
I would have been even more intimidated.
As was I.
I'm afraid I'm going to be petrified by the end of this conversation.
Right.
No.
I'll be understanding a little bit more.
Right. So my degree is in chemical engineering, and I got a job with this consulting firm in the life sciences and manufacturing division. You know, the company does all sorts of other stuff. So most of the training was on the job training, you know, learning about the products, how they're made, how you can implement different, you know, efficiencies within their process and things like that, helping them with something they already know, but trying to make it better or streamlined or, you know, just build it.
A lot of it had to do with manufacturing and processes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was equipment. It was tanks and pipes and pumps and things like that.
I'm guessing that's half of it. The other half is getting the humans that operate them to
Yeah, well,
to work.
Yes, that wasn't my responsibility too much. We handed
Okay.
it off after
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
But there was some of the, you know, if you you know, turn this lever, change this valve, what happens to it? How does it get through the process?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. And you worked on the bullet
I did. Yeah.
distillery. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty neat. Got to learn a lot about the history and the culture, and you know, trying to blend old with new, which was pretty cool because it's a very it's rooted in culture and history and how we've always done things. But then we wanted to make something that was more state of the art and automated, which it used to be just a guy dumping something in a tank with a bucket, and now we were going to make it where you opened a lever and that all collected and did it that way. So you could like see the whole screen and the whole facility all in one big window at a time. So it was pretty neat.
So did your team just take that blank slate, like the old ways, and you just have a blank slate and you?
Yes and no. We have a lot of input from the clients,
Yeah.
from the customers. They know what they want to do. They know where they need to get to, and so it's a lot of collaboration with them.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like interesting stuff. Is it
It was, yeah.
enjoyable? Like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and and no. I
I think
mean,
it's for her, for being on the other side of it as her husband. I think the projects themselves were the interesting and enjoyable part.
Yeah.
I think it's just like anything in corporation or corporate world, the stuff you have to deal with on the side is maybe the difficult part.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have is creativity part of that? I mean, it's got to.
It
It
has
seems
to be.
like a creative process.
I mean, it's definitely in the design. How do you make this work within the budget that you're given? So, I mean, you have to come up with creative solutions. And then there's some things where, like, you're working within a building that's already built, or you're building it, so you've got ceiling height constraints or things like that. So how do you get your things to route through those areas?
Right.
So definitely problem solving and creativity along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. How big of a team were you working with?
I think I was in a group of about 50 or so engineers. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
We were all working on different things at the same time.
in this project or in different.
No, on different projects,
Okay.
yeah.
On this project, how many people would collaborate?
There were 3 of us
Okay.
in the process group, and then you've got a bunch of different groups for the other areas of the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds. It just seems so interesting.
It is,
stuff.
yeah,
So, what do you miss? What do you miss about that?
I would have to say that I don't really miss it because I'm able to kind of parlay that experience to what we're doing now. I get to be a problem solver. I get to use creativity and design. I get to, look at a space and figure out, does this layout work? Is there something we can do to fix it? And then also, bring that within the budget that we've set for ourselves.
Yeah.
So I kind of get to do that, and I get to do it with him.
Yeah.
So.
Now, while you were doing that, were you still in the corporate world, or had you?
So I had left the corporate world in 2014.
Yeah.
We moved back from Texas, and that move was a lot of family stuff, and
Yeah.
I kind of needed to take a step back away from work because I was beat to death from that, and so I stayed at home with our kids for 3 years, which was probably one of the most rewarding and important decisions that I think that I've personally made and we've made together. But I had gotten into real estate about 5 years ago prior to coming in, and we've always had a love together of real estate and trying to find, again, those creative, that's where we're very much alike, is being creative. We're both problem solvers. We just achieve or get to the goal a little bit different, which is, I think, such a great asset to both of us as we work together. But I came from the manufacturing background, where the levers and the pullers and the inventory and managing all those folks and trying to implement some of the processes and putting those standard operating procedures into place. So I think we gel very, very well together from both of our backgrounds.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't. If you've got that creative streak, you can't lock it away. Like it's gotta come out, or you're not happy.
Right.
I've got that creative streak. I'd have very limited creative talents. I wish I could fill up a blank canvas with beautiful things, but it's like systems are that's my
Right.
spreadsheets. Like I have to express creativity through that. So it's not the most not the one I would choose to have. But you work with what you got. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you, all right. So you are working in this. That's got to be a pretty demanding career, I would imagine, building a distillery from scratch with new technology and with an old brand. There's timelines. I would imagine that was pretty demanding. And you're also building a family. So you've got 3, 4, 5 kids at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, we had 5. I was pregnant with Easton at the time that we were on that project. So yeah, stressful for sure.
how did you personally, I'm curious how you personally managed your time with all those things.
I mean, I think honestly that time, it's your work-life balance, but with the kids being younger, it's a little bit easier. Now we're into the part where we need to get them to and from all their activities, and that's a lot more management than it was that you go to work every day, you come home, you do dinner, and you have your family time. So that was the balance. Now we have to run here, there, and everywhere to get them to and from what they're going to.
Yeah, plenty of things for kids to do in Spartanburg and Greenville, no doubt.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So building the family, demanding corporate job. Tell me more about what you're doing in real estate.
So when I first started out, I'd started out with Berkshire Hathaway. I felt like starting with a larger brokerage and learning, being educated was maybe a better way to go. Yeah. But I had dealt primarily with buyers to start out with, just single family homes. And then once I had been in the business, those referrals started to come in through helping sellers. And really through 22, I would say I was about 50-50 on representation from both sides. It's so rewarding to know that you're helping somebody in a situation that's possibly difficult. And there's, not every transaction is the same, and they're at most 45 days typically. So it's fun to be able to power through, be creative, make, orchestrate a deal that works out for your client. They get the house and move in and all their moving stuff, utilities. And so it was kind of weird being able to use some of that multitasking skills that I had used prior in the manufacturing world and in our home life of, hey, we got a bunch of balls in the air. How do we, orchestrate them so that it flows and there's not any hiccups, kind of thing. And then ultimately, I think that's where I came to you in 21 about looking at doing investing.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
And I think the two of us are really good at taking procedures that are in place and utilizing those to move forward. We're both very good idea people, but I think sometimes if we don't have, the start kind of laid out for us, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
That we come up with great ideas, but how do you implement them?
Yeah.
And I think that was the attraction, as we came on board, and why we kind of sought this direction. And really, we feel like we're on the car right here. It's hard to separate the emotional side of those properties, but I think we put so much of ourselves into them and try to really put out a quality product at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to us as people, I think, as integrity standpoint.
Yeah. And that idea of having the idea and valuing the structure, or needing the structure, I don't think you're unique in needing the structure to make the idea live. I think you're probably unique in having the self-awareness to know you need the structure.
But we also know our personalities as well. I am very risk averse and he's very, let's jump into it. And that's always been kind of a struggle with us. He's like, let's do this. I'm like, I don't know about that. So, we balance each other in that respect for sure. So we're very self-aware of our strengths and our weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where we, complement each other together.
Yeah. So I think you're probably undervaluing what you did to go from a corporate job with stability, right? You got 5 kids. Yeah. Be it you're an agent, you're on a 1099, right? That's not stable income. You give that you chose to give that up. Tell me, and you just said you're risk averse.
Right. It doesn't seem to make much sense. I think it's that, we made the decision to move forward. And we can't really, I couldn't straddle the line. I couldn't do all the things. I didn't have enough bandwidth. I didn't have enough time to do my corporate job and to do our startup and to take care of our children. I was being pulled in too many different directions, and I made the choice that we're going to do this, that we made this commitment, so I'm going to make the commitment to us. And that's really what pushed the direction to leave and to take this on full time. Yeah.
It's not easy.
No.
Right?
No, well, it's not. No.
I've asked people that have made that jump, because I know how hard it was. I know how hard it was for me. Like, I've said before, like, you never wake up and think, wow, this is the day that I'm going to walk away from my W-2.
Yeah.
and feel good
Right.
about it.
Right.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that day?
Of course I do. Of course I do.
Because there was a specific moment.
Yeah.
Something happened at her job. She hung the phone up. I could still see it like it was yesterday. And she's like, I'm going to go for a quick walk.
Yeah.
And I said, okay.
Yeah.
And I knew that whatever just had happened was hindsight, I can say I know this, but I knew that it was going to be life-changing. I could feel like that wasn't a normal thing for her to go do that. So she came back, kind of explained to me what had happened. I said, just be done. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, we've put ourselves in a position the last year and a half financially that we do not require us to have an income for a significant amount of time. And if it doesn't work, we'll just figure it out. And she's like, okay.
Yeah?
Yeah. But again, it's the difference in our personality where he's like, well, then just quit. And I would have stewed on it for days and days and days.
And let me also say that neither one of us are quitters. We like to finish things almost to a fault.
Yeah.
But in this moment, I think we both knew that it was the healthiest decision for our family and the future of our business that we had started.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you feel it was important for you personally and your life goals?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, apart from the family, just from...
Right. To make a decision and a commitment to something and not be halfway.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a big step for me.
I don't know what your phone call was like, but I got to a point where I felt like my future was being determined by administrators that I didn't have any control over. And I started to I describe it as I felt like I was living in a box that was too small for me, and other people were determining how big that box could be. And when I started seeing it that way, I started to resent it. And then when I started resenting it, there was no going back.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I remember thinking, like, I'm going to either succeed or I'm going to fail at this, but it's going to be because of me, right? Like, I'm going to control. And if I succeed, great. If I fail, I know I can't blame anybody else but me.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. But it's not easy.
No, absolutely not. No, it's hard to leave that comfort zone. Like, it's easier to stay and be disgruntled, but you're safe instead of, branching out and knowing that it's all on you.
Yeah.
And do you think that our experience in Texas kind of prepared us for that because that was a very similar situation, except the roles were reversed. She was at home with the kids. I was working 15, 16-hour days, multiple shifts. And I came home one day and she's like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I said, either do I. So we made the decision in that moment we're 15 hours away from family. let's move back to South Carolina. I said, hey, let's be responsible about this. See if you can get your old job back. Because she had.
So you made the decision to leave, even though you didn't know, you didn't have anything.
At that point, we
At
didn't
that point.
know.
So
Yeah.
I said, see if you can get your job back. And that way we have something to move back home for. She had it back basically the next day. We called an agent that we had been working with that helped us with the house.
Yeah.
She listed the house the day after. We had the house under contract the next day. We were back in South Carolina in 2 weeks and completely moved the house. We drove loaded the van, the trucks up, drove 2 cars back, and just did it.
Wow.
And
I think
Wow.
it's kind of like, that the thing that's like brewing inside, and you know that you need a change or that something's not quite right. And then when somebody else is able to just make that one, say that thing, say it out loud,
Yeah.
makes it real and makes it like, now we got to put it in action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking about this the other day with somebody, and that decision. I think it requires, at the end of the day, like to get into that car or to walk into that office with your resignation letter. Like, it requires self-belief, right? At the end of the day, like that's really
Yeah.
what allows you to do it, is just belief in yourself. And it sounds like you guys made some big life decisions, but you don't get in that car to South Carolina without believing in yourself.
Right.
Right.
That whatever, you'll figure it out. It's what you said about the business.
absolutely.
Yeah. And hearing the two of you talk, like it's self-belief, but I also hear like your belief in her.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
And I think, when you're in a healthy relationship, I'm sure we take that for granted. It's not just our own self-belief, but it's having somebody else believe in you. Makes those big decisions easier.
Right.
Right? But still not easy. So you've got how many your kids, boys, girls?
Yeah, we've got 3 boys and 2 girls.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you like are you aware of, I'm sure you're aware of your own self-belief and confidence. How are you being intentional about building that with your daughters?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How are you doing that?
Yeah, I feel like we like to show them what we're doing on a daily basis. We like to take them to the houses that we're doing. We like to, kind of explain our process, and they can clearly see us working every day, working together. I feel like that's setting a good example for them.
Yeah. Were they old enough to be aware of what the big decisions you guys were making?
Yeah, I don't think that they really, they were in 4th grade, so they're aware, but probably not really understanding any of the consequences of what it was. They just knew that something was different.
Yeah.
I think they'll get it at some point,
I think what they've seen through us, if you look, we moved right at the end of 20, in the middle of COVID, and what they saw that it was to better their situation. We had lived in a neighborhood that it was primarily older couples, not a lot of families, and COVID really showed us they've got their friends in the house, as their friends, but they need more than that. And we moved to a neighborhood that was, really kid rich. And I don't think we regret one day. So we are, to kind of go back to where we were before you asked that, I think we have the ability to take a big situation for most people and turn it into a simpler choice, whether it's do it or not to do it.
Yeah.
We don't allow the scale or the size of what it influence us, whether it's right or wrong. Because the task to get there is still the same. You got to do it regardless.
Process.
Yep. But I think as far as Katie with the girls, she does an awesome job too with each one of our kids, really allowing them to express their interests independently and really fostering and nurturing that growth. I grew up as a team sports guy.
Yeah.
All my kids are not all
Yeah.
team sports kids. And it's, we've got son that loves the trombone and piano and banjo and, he wrestles. So trying to let them go through these diverse experiences and struggling, which is so important in our house, and failure. We talk about it all the time. We do not remove roadblocks from them whatsoever.
Yeah.
They have to suffer through it, figure it out. We talk through it.
Yeah.
What would you learn in the experience? And next time this happens, or a situation that happens, it's not going to be as difficult.
Yeah. I've been coaching my daughter's teams since I left college coaching. I've coached a lot of girls' teams, and I've coached a lot of boys' teams. Boys are often not short on confidence. Like we tend to overstate
Right.
our abilities, and I've always been struck by the talented teenage girls that I coach who don't value their talent. And you got boys who overvalue their talent. And girls, it's like the challenge of, and these are generalizations, but there are trends that you just see in coaching. And one of the challenges with coaching girls is nurturing that self-belief. Like, you are really good, but that takes convincing.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just repeating it to them. It's the repeatability, the encouragement, if they make a mistake, you're not there like screaming, "Why'd you do that?" Our girls are pretty similar with that. Like they play volleyball, and they've played timid, and then they've had to kind of be brought up in you've got talent.
Yeah.
Be aggressive. Don't let that ball fall and be like, "Oh, that wasn't supposed to be mine." But you continue to say, "Wow, you did a great job on that. Keep it up." Or, "Yeah, the serve didn't go over this time. You'll get it next time. Just keep, focusing on the, techniques that you've been taught."
Yeah.
So you just have to be their cheerleader. Just, that repeatability.
Yeah. Can you mention not removing the roadblocks from their lives? As a coach, coaching other people's kids, like I see that so much, and it's like I've done this for so long, but now, like kids learn through adversity, right? Like, and for upper middle class kids playing American sports, like they may not have a whole lot of adversity to deal with in life. A lot of things are easy for them.
Right.
So playing youth sports is like their only opportunity to have adversity in their life. And so here's this great opportunity for a kid to learn through the adversity. And here comes the parent. And they just swoosh in and remove the adversity, right? But then I also know it's hard to let your kids struggle. So like can you tell me like an example of where you've had that urge to remove adversity and chose not to?
That question is maybe not a good one to direct at me because I don't. There's not a time I'm trying to help them with that.
Well, I mean, you as a coach,
Yeah.
is there?
I don't know if this is really the right way to. So our second oldest, I know what he wants. I don't think I try to give him tools, like from conversation standpoint, not necessarily the best equipment or this other stuff, but trying to show him, we do these like goofy things at night that are exercises, who can hold the longest plank or, it's stuff like that. But he would say, "I want to get stronger," but he wasn't doing anything about it.
Yeah.
And so I think right before we came, he was on the floor in our living room, just being silly, and he did like 45 push-ups. And I said, "Do you remember about 2 months ago, your brother was doing the same thing in the living room, and you tried to do it, and you could barely get 5. I said, you wanted to argue with me about your technique and how you weren't doing anything, but I told you the right way to do it. And in private, you went and did those push-ups and do it, and look how much stronger you are now. You know, we didn't just give you those push-ups because you had the wrong technique. That's not what I was supporting. But I mean, there's so many examples. Like you talk about coaching other people's kids.
Yeah.
I think that's more difficult than being a parent.
Oh.
And I will say that as a coach, I find it harder for me not to coach when they're playing for somebody else. Like I have to walk away.
Yeah.
Because my mindset is to always want to help coach.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you have another coach, you listen to them. If you have questions, we can talk about it off to the side. I mean, what do you think?
But I think maybe as far as like not removing obstacles, like we wouldn't ever go to another coach and say, oh, you're not giving them enough playing time or anything like that. Like they've got to figure that out. If there's somebody more talented than you that's going to be in, so be it. You know, we're not those parents that are like, you know, all up in another coach's face.
Yeah.
You know, I think we do have a rule in our house, and it doesn't always, it's not an absolute, but the kids will come to us, and we have a phrase that you're not allowed to start a sentence with somebody else's name. Don't come in here and tell me what somebody else is doing. But also,
Pro tip for having 5 kids.
yeah. But the other thing is, I'm not going to listen to a kid problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys have to go figure this out and solve it for yourself. Communicate. Yeah. It's not always through yelling. It's not through crying.
Yeah.
It's not through hitting. You guys have to go figure this out.
Yeah, there's a lot of gameplay, like in the front yard.
Yeah.
Football, baseball, whatever. They're making up rules as they go along, and then they get mad if somebody breaks it, and they try to come in and tattle about it. Like, this is between you guys. You have to figure this out. We can't. This is, like he said, a kid problem, not
that's a small thing, but I think that's really important. We did that too. Like, don't drag us into your politics.
Yes. I don't care if you didn't count to
It's your
5.
problem to solve.
Right.
We had a sorted out chair.
I like
That
that.
was kind of a double-sided, and if they started to do that, we would say, all right, you're both in the chair together until you sort it out.
Love it.
I like
Love
that.
it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, so you hand in that resignation and start a business flipping houses. I'm assuming that is well outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so tell me what that was like.
Oh, just the startup of the business itself, or the very first house that we got.
Let's go to the very first house.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that first house was definitely, it was exciting, for sure. It was outside our comfort zone, but we had a contractor that, you know, had helped Ryan with different transactions, kind of a handyman kind of guy. We walked it, we're, you know, ready to go. And then he ghosts us.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of when
Thankfully, that was before it even started.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't do any work on it. So that's, you know, a little bit when the panic sets in. But then that's the, you know, where you get behind the wheel and like, we gotta figure this out. We gotta make this work. We gotta go look for another contractor. So, you know, that's kind of where our journey began. But I think it was definitely a unique experience, to say the least, on our first one, for sure.
So you're both involved. I mean, it seems like you're pretty equally.
Absolutely.
You've been equally involved from the beginning, which is kind of unique, because often one of the two becomes the driver and the other kind of ends up in a less of an active role. But you guys have impressed me. Like, you both are really driving. So how did you? Did you sit down and think about like divisions of boundaries and like how you would divide and conquer, or did you just figure it out on the fly?
think it was more the latter. I think we had the initial conversations of, hey, this is, I think, where our responsibility should lie. But I think as we see day to day, it's like this. And I think that's to a benefit to us. There's things that she can handle so quickly that it would take me a while to get into it. I can get to the answer, but it would not be as fast. And there's things on my side where, I can handle quickly, but at the end of the day, I'm still sharing this information, whether it's in the car, if we're evaluating a property, because the choices that she's making, or that she's, let's just say from a design or a budget standpoint, or where we stand overall, it's influencing what I'm doing. So I have to know where she's at to be able to do what I want to do on my side, and vice versa. I will 100% say the reason that we're successful in a marriage is the same reason that we'll be successful in this business, is because of our communication. We do not internalize, we don't hold in. We have very difficult conversations, and then they're done. And it's, if you let that stuff fester, I mean, it can destroy everything that you're trying to build, both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, we did go into it thinking that we would have specific roles. He's definitely the people person, I'm the numbers person and the data. But it has morphed as we've gone. Like, it's so intertwined. It really is. And you have to work together, and you have to figure out how to do all of it. I still don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to be the person to have the yucky conversations with the contractor or anything like that. So I still put that mostly on him. But it's fine because he can handle it, and he can, then we just move forward. So.
Has it been difficult? Like, before, you had two separate businesses, right? Like, or two separate careers. Now, working together, have you been able to find those? Like, have you been able to find boundaries where you turn off the business, or is it?
We have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it'll be. I mean,
it's few and far between that it's after hours stuff.
Well, I think that's. I mean, it's a good example. There's been it's been a day, or it's been whatever, and I'm constantly going. My mind is constantly on it. I'm thinking about, well, X, Y, and Z, and what about tomorrow, and what about this, and then there'll be a time, we'll sit down, and he's like, nothing's going to happen tonight. Nothing that you say about this is going to change what happens today. Let's not talk about it. Turn it off, and we'll pick back up in the morning.
Yeah.
And, so that's where we have to, we kind of set the boundaries.
We do start every day with a morning meeting.
Do you? Like a business meeting between the two of you?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we'll kind of, things that she's working on, things that I'm working on, where do we currently stand?
Yeah.
Those action items. Just anything, but.
And you do this every day?
Every day.
5 days a week?
Because here's what it's done, and this may come up later in the efficiency conversation, is that there's days that I think that I've got to go buy a house to check on something. And through our conversation, it's not the best use of our time at that point. We are at these houses a good bit. We're very involved in that part of it. But it's like, hey, they're in the process of working on that. Why don't we wait till tomorrow? Because that's when they're supposed to finish. We'll check on it then. And then today we had these other outstanding items. Let's go ahead and cross those off. And then we can be more efficient, whether it's an office day or if it's going to evaluate a property. We really figure out where we should be in that morning conversation. Sometimes it takes the things that she was thinking about the night before. We'll address them then. But sometimes we find out those things that she was thinking about are irrelevant. She doesn't even remember what they were the next day. It doesn't mean they're not important.
Yeah.
It's just because they're going through your checks in your head.
Yeah.
But I feel like those meetings have really made, and they're normally 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's not a very long time.
We're very efficient with. especially what we're talking about. Because we may say, bring up something, and then so you ask the question, does that topic or does that issue need addressing now? And so if it doesn't, you put it over here and you focus your energy on the things that are important as of today or the week or leading into, and then you pull this back in at the right time, whether that's in the planning process or right before.
Yeah.
Those meetings actually came out of necessity from our experience from the previous year with, we got to the end of projects, we were just scrambling. Every day was something different. It felt to me very overwhelming. It wasn't very organized, and then that just makes my brain hurt. And we were doing the best that we could to get the job finished or something like that. So we put these meetings in place to try to be more proactive instead of reactive, and that's really helped us, focus and be productive.
Yeah. Well, it's that structure we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like I think people are really good at budgeting money because like we're aware that money is finite, and so we budget and especially when you have 5 kids, you learn, you learn how to allocate it, and we're not good at doing the same with time. And time is more finite than money. You can always make more money, but you can't do that with time. So I think that structure of the daily meeting, really what you're doing is budgeting. It sounds like you're budgeting one another's time.
Yeah.
Do you have your phone on you?
I do. Yeah.
You got to see this. So when you talk about all the moving parts in our family and our business, I'm not the best. I do a lot of things in my head. Yeah. And then if I have to go reference the computer for something, I'll do it at that point. Yeah. But this is our monthly calendar, color coded by person, activity. But at
you married
any
a
point,
chemical engineer.
Yeah. At any point, if we need to go look something, I don't have to call her and say, hey, do we have anything going on this block? Yeah. I can pull it up because it's shared. Yeah. And then if I've got something and she's not with me, I'll enter it in, and it really makes life smooth. Yeah,
I used to fear that. Like when I left the university, there's all these meetings, and you didn't have control of your time. It's like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not having any meetings, and it didn't work. Like the urgent just cannibalized all the time. And then over the past few years, I really tried to be intentional about structuring time and allocating time to some things weekly, some things monthly, some things quarterly. Right. So it's all structured, and I've found that that's given me time for creativity. Like those things that I want to do, I actually allocate time to it.
Right. Yeah. You actually have more time.
Yeah.
When you're organized,
it's more, and the time is more quality. It's right. It's not just stealing time in the midst of chaos. So, but flipping a house, it's a big project, right? What was the budget on your first house?
I believe the first house budget was about $70,000.
Yep. So, big budget. You, I'm sure you planned that from start to finish.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. How did that compare? Like, was that in terms of like challenging for you? Was that easy after designing a distillery?
I mean, tracking the budget and keeping track of everything, that was pretty easy. It's something that I enjoy doing. I need to do. I need to know. I need to have all those line items. My lists of things, the to-do lists. I mean, that's just how I function.
Yeah. And then the most important human in the system goes to you.
Right. Right. So we're starting back at square one.
Yeah. And so you find another contractor. What was challenging about that first project for you?
That second
That's
contract.
under contractor, right?
Contractors, contractors. There's a theme.
That's really what.
Yeah.
It was. So we interviewed 2 different contractors, and we got their quotes, and the one came back at about twice what our budget was, and then the other came in right about what our budget was, and we thought this was great. They gave us a great story about, it was a female-run company. She came from a hard background. She made something of herself. She's got all these other projects going at the same time. We, we really liked her and wanted to move forward. And they started out great. They were in there, a lot of work all at one time. So then we bought 2 more houses, and with a plan for them to do those ones as well. And then we started noticing that they were not keeping the promises that they had made to us. They weren't showing up.
They weren't executing either
they weren't.
on their responsibilities.
Right.
Was it more an issue of not showing up or not executing when they were there?
Not showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, telling us that something was going to happen, and then
But they were trying to manage multiple job sites.
yes, and others
Yeah.
that they had. You're right. And then so they told us that they were going to give us their son to project manage for just us. He was our guy, and we were on them, continuously. Like, okay, so what's the plan for today? What are we doing? All this, and it wasn't getting done. So then we found out that there was some other behind the scenes things that they were doing with other projects, and so that's when we had to get out of the relationship with them. And then we have these 3 houses that we've got to finish and figure out how to get this.
So none of the 3 were finished when you let them go.
No.
Yeah.
And that was tough because it's like, do we just fight through some of these pains so that we can keep moving forward, or do we reset and try to do it?
Which of you knew first that they weren't right? Yeah.
Yeah.
During demo?
Yeah. What was the indicator?
We had clearly stated what the scope was for the job. We even had it up on the walls on the plan of what was going to happen room by room. We had houses probably from 1930, that house?
Yeah.
Beautiful doors. Nothing wrong with the handles, nothing wrong with the jamb, nothing, real thick old trim. And we did not budget to remove the doors or to replace the doors. And I show up to the job site, and the doors themselves were on the front porch with no casing, with no jams.
Yeah.
And I said, why would you throw away the jams? Like, we got to remortise all the hinges. Like,
Yeah. Just bad judgment.
all I asked you to do was to cut the nails out, put screws in the side, and keep everything. Well, then we show up the next day, and they ripped out all the base, which we had not budgeted for. And now it's created this other rat's nest of other issues that we had. They had explained to us that they had really good connections with the county that we were working with.
Yeah.
We found out that was not true either. I think they should have caught that we had to do a full rewire, the plumbing. We didn't, things that we overlooked on a new house, we had never done it before.
Yeah.
The meter was missing and
Yeah.
would not be released back to us until the
Yeah.
whole house was rewired.
Yeah.
But to go back to what you were saying, I think when I realized that, I was subtle because I knew, I don't want to say fragile, but I knew that she had some angst already. So I'm like, how do I have to,
That was a well-chosen word.
Right? I like that.
how do I admit to my partner
Yeah.
that I don't have faith in the people that we've started with,
Uh,
that were, and at the same time, see if she acknowledges what I'm feeling at the same time without blowing this thing up.
yeah.
So I think, I don't remember the exact
No. Yeah.
phrase, or the way I asked it. I said, hey, what are you thinking about our progress or the way of things? And she it was like 50-50. She said, hey, we've seen some really good things, but I'm not sure where we should be because we don't have any benchmark to reference anything by.
Yeah.
And I think once I put that initial thing in her head, her eyes became just like fixated on what they were not doing and what should be happening. And so those conversations seemed to be happening more and more. And then we started to, like, questions that they were asking us just didn't jive with what I'm like, something's up here. We need to take full control back of money side of it until we get this figured out.
Yeah.
And it was shortly, I think we had a really good conversation at Thanksgiving. We had 2 weeks of minuscule stuff, but there was stuff happening. I think in an effort to, hey, we got to reallocate these guys. I feel like they knew that we knew something was going on.
Yeah.
And then after Christmas, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
This is it. We can't. We're gonna sink if we don't jump ship here.
Yeah. And I think people sometimes wait too long to make that decision. Like, and then you wait too long, and it just gets worse. Never regretted making that decision. In hindsight, like if you get to the point of making that decision, you really need to make it.
Right.
Right. So, Katy, I imagine you're watching all this, and you're taking, like, your professional experience in engineering, and you're probably trying to figure out this new business, right? And take what you know about engineering and processes and apply it to this brand new thing that is a residential remodel construction site with very different characters.
Right.
So was that where your head was at? And are you?
Well, I mean, I don't think at this point, it's just what do we do next?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? Yeah, we know we have problems, but we can't just sit in it and stew in it. But I didn't know the answer to that.
You didn't know what it looked like.
I didn't know what it looked like. I knew, we needed a fix. We needed somebody that, was licensed, or that, we couldn't do the work ourselves because of the city and the permits and all that stuff. And how do we get out of this relationship with these people that, have taken our money and, things like that. So it was a lot of questions more than solutions. I didn't really know where to go.
So 2 years into this, you've had success. I think you even had success with those first 3, even though there was adversity. But 2 years into this, do you have a better sense of what that job site should look like?
I think so.
Oh, I think. I feel like we've grown up in those 2 years. I think we've grown up 10 years.
Well, talk to me about what does that functioning job site look like? You still got a contractor, right? What does it look like?
I guess, from what approach do you mean? Just
what does that look like if you were to design a distillery for efficiency and to make that work?
Okay.
Looking at a job site, and from what all you've learned, different contractors, you tried different things. What's your vision? Like, what does success look like on that job site? Is the contractor on site? Are they managing multiple sites?
I think, to be realistic, I think that contractor, for us right now with our full load that we've got, I think we cannot expect somebody to be on site all the time, and that maybe their guys are there while they're managing maybe some other projects. But more than anything, it just comes to relationships in life. It's laying out clear expectations of, maybe we didn't do that on those first 3, that we thought we had a plan because we had a scope of work.
On a spreadsheet.
On a spreadsheet.
That an engineer can read.
But
maybe not a contractor.
we did not clearly articulate what that scope of work meant from a timeline standpoint.
Yeah.
And it set clear expectations on what we want. I mean, one of my big things is I hate a dirty job site. Like these guys that it needs to be, you're not efficient when things are dirty.
Yeah.
And it causes a whole other set of issues. Things are, if they're propped up against the wall, there may be an issue behind that with an electrical output that gets missed with an electrician. And then he's got to be called back out there. He's upset.
Yeah.
So it's not having anybody impact another person's job negatively without reason. And I think that's one of the things that we talked through with Kyle, who's our current contractor, is, hey, these are expectations. We're paying you to manage this. You've got to have those conversations with these guys.
Yeah.
If I need to get involved, it's going to be a different conversation.
Yeah. How do you manage your time with your contractor? Do you spend a certain, like you guys have the daily meetings, do you have a weekly meeting with him?
I say we see Kyle at least twice a week.
I was going to say that too. Yeah, at the house, we're usually there. You know, we're in contact with him through texts. But yeah, he's at the site. We're at the site. We're looking at progress. We're talking through next steps and schedules and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to structure his time, or do you trust him with that?
So I do think it's something that we need to improve on. I don't think that it's done intentionally.
Yeah.
From his behalf, I don't think there's anything that's there's any malice behind what he's doing. But I think that we can be more efficient as a team. But that goes back through expectations. You know, one of the things that I'd like to go back with him is we set our finish date. Let's do a schedule backwards. And then as we move forward and start, you know, having these guys already set up on a schedule. And I know this isn't always ideal, or it doesn't work this way all the time, but it's like, hey, let the plumber know he's got to be there in 2 weeks. Let's not let him know on Wednesday that we need him there on Friday because the inspection's on Monday.
Yeah.
You know, and it's working back, talking through maybe some pinch points and how do we allocate enough time and what needs to happen during there. And, hey, can we condense it? Do we have too much fluff in there?
Yeah.
But I think with him, he's also learning from a time management because he does have his other projects.
Yeah.
But I think he sees with us the potential of I could be their main guy and he'll continue to, I mean, our relation, we have good communication with him.
Yeah.
So I think he's open.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we got burned pretty bad because we trusted initially. And, you know, with the new guy, it's been cautiously optimistic, cautiously trusting. He's proved himself.
Yeah.
So, you know, give him a little bit more, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but he also took a risk on us. We had a very limited budget to finish our last project.
Yeah.
And he was like, listen, this is awful this happened, you guys.
Yeah.
Let's put a plan together with what you have left
Yeah.
and we'll get this thing finished and we'll move on and that way we can fresh start. And so that gave him a little more credibility from his standpoint and as far as his integrity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough coming from a professional environment on a team of 3 engineers where you have to collaborate. The culture is trusting one another, right? You can't question your colleagues in that environment. And then you're in this new environment and the rules are different. The people are different, right? And your role is different. So you're going from colleague to owning the whole project, and it's just a different thing to figure out.
Absolutely.
I know I struggled with that coming from the university. I'm having lunch with PhDs every day, and then I'm on a construction site, and it's just different.
Yeah.
You got to learn, but the skills translate. It just takes time to translate them. Well, I think there are a lot of couples who dream of doing what you guys are doing, which is to leave the corporate job, own a business together. You guys have really, it's pretty cool how you guys have worked together, because I've kind of seen it from the outside. What advice would you give to another couple that makes this leap? Not in this specific business, but just in general, going into business together.
Yeah, we hear it from a lot of people that say that they could never work with their spouse, or
Yeah.
that's kind of a common thread. But if you make your marriage work, and if you are equal partners, it's not that far of a leap. You put your trust in your partner, in your spouse, and you trust that they're going to be there for you. You trust that they're going to do whatever's right for yourself and your family, and then ultimately, of course, they're going to do that for your business too. So it's I think it's easy to take that leap of faith if you have the trust in your spouse.
Yeah, I think it's having the ability to, a lot of times people project their insecurities onto their spouse
Yeah.
and put fault on them. I think one of the biggest things that the two of us, and we've talked about it already, but I believe in her so much. And I believe in myself.
Yeah.
I don't ever think there's a possibility that we're going to fail. That never goes through my mind. And I know that she maybe looks at me sometimes as like, okay, but let's look at reality. And I'm like, but I'm like, okay, well, let's look. We're not dead yet. We can still figure this out. But it's. I have full faith in her character and backing me and supporting me and herself.
Yeah, that's the self belief and the belief of the partner. Katie, so for women out there, and like young women who have stability, they've got a job, they're very competent at it, and they feel whatever it is that it's not enough, and they go through that struggle. Like what advice do you give them?
Well, I think if you're having that feeling, trust your gut that if that's telling you something needs to change, then something needs to change. If you're not happy with what you're doing, if it's comfortable, you feel secure in it, but it's not giving you what you want, you have the power to make the change. You just have to believe in yourself to do that. And you make it so that you're doing something for yourself and not for somebody else.
Well, that's great. Thanks. I could go on for another hour, 2 hours, 3 hours with you guys, because I think there's just like this well of great stuff. So we'll have to do it again.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.